The first time I stopped trying to talk myself out of it was over a smell in my own bed. I got home late, dropped my bag by the dresser, sat down on my side of the mattress, and caught something that didn't belong there. Not perfume, not anything obvious or dramatic, just a faint male smell worked down into the sheets. Soap, sweat, whatever a man leaves behind when he's been somewhere long enough for the fabric to keep him. My wife came out of the bathroom, saw my face, and asked what was wrong. I said, "Do you smell that?" She leaned in for half a second and said, "Smell what?" "On the bed." She barely even paused. "You're imagining things." Then, while still telling me I was imagining it, she started stripping the bed so fast she nearly yanked the comforter onto the floor. That was the part that killed whatever trust I had left. Not just the smell, the speed, the nerves. The way she said there was nothing there while she was already balling up the sheets with both hands. I said, "If nothing smells wrong, why are you washing it right now?" She snapped, "Because now you've got me thinking about it." That answer didn't even make sense, and she knew it. She still didn't stop. Pillowcases, fitted sheet, flat sheet, even the blanket at the foot of the bed. Straight into the washer, like she was trying to get rid of something before I could stand there long enough to name it. The worst part was what hit me a second later. She didn't seem surprised by the smell. She seemed annoyed that I had noticed it. That was the moment the whole thing changed for me. Not because I suddenly had proof, because I realized I didn't believe her anymore. I'm a hydro engineer. The money is good. The schedule is garbage. I work on water infrastructure jobs, and when I'm needed on a site, I can be gone for 2 weeks, sometimes 3, then home for a stretch, then gone again. It paid for a nice house, good schools, and the kind of life people think means a marriage must be doing fine. It also meant I spent years telling myself I was doing the hard part for my family, while my wife was the one actually living the daily rhythm of the house. That rhythm matters more than I understood at the time. Our place had turned into one of those houses with a running list of small jobs I knew about and kept pushing to "when I'm back." Nothing major. A cabinet door in the kitchen hung low. The latch on the side gate stuck unless you lifted it. The handle in the guest bathroom had a little wobble to it. A bracket on one of the garage shelves needed tightening. A patio light in the back flickered if the weather changed. Just normal house stuff. The kind you notice, swear you'll handle on your next weekend home, then leave for another trip. One time I came back and some of those things were already fixed. The cabinet door sat straight. The gate latch closed clean. The guest bathroom handle was firm. Even the garage shelf bracket had been tightened. At first I felt relieved. Then I had this strange little reaction I couldn't shake. Whoever had done it knew exactly what to touch. Not one big handyman call. Not a plumber. Not an electrician. Not somebody hired for one specific problem. It was a set of tiny repairs that only really mattered to someone paying close attention to how our house actually felt to live in. I asked my wife about it while she was putting groceries away. She said, "I had a home master come by." That was the exact phrase she used. Home master. I said, "For all of that?" She shrugged. "He was already here. He just fixed a few things while he was at it." Already here from where? I asked what she paid. She gave me a number too quickly and too casually. It wasn't laughably low. It was worse than that. It was close enough to sound real if you didn't stop on it, and just cheap enough to bother me if you did. I said, "Do you still have the receipt?" She kept putting cans away and said, "No, I threw it out." A normal man probably lets that go. I didn't. Not because I care about receipts, because the whole thing felt thin. She couldn't remember what day he came. Couldn't say if he'd been there one time, or maybe stopped by twice. First she said he fixed the cabinet. Then later she mentioned he'd also looked at the backlight. When I asked why she didn't just text me about any of it, she gave me that flat look and said, "Because I didn't think every little thing in this house needed to wait for your approval." The next day, I found a torn hardware packet in the trash from a set of cheap cabinet hinges. So the work was real. The trail around it wasn't. Then the kids made it worse. My son was messing with a toy that needed batteries and said, "Can the guy do it when he comes back?" I asked, "What guy?" He looked at me like I was slow. "The guy." From the table, my daughter said, "Yeah, he knows where the tools are." That got my full attention. I said, "What guy knows where the tools are?" My wife cut in before either of them could say anything else. "They mean the handyman. Don't make it weird." That sentence stayed with me because people don't usually say, "Don't make it weird," unless they already know something is. After that, I started seeing stupid little things that wouldn't have mattered to anyone else. My short screwdriver wasn't back where I keep it. The tape measure was left half out on the bench. The small ladder had been moved. The drill battery was fully charged, and I knew I'd left it almost dead before my last trip. None of that proves cheating. I know that. What it proves is comfort. Somebody had been in my garage using my things like he was comfortable there. I asked her if the handyman had used my tools. She said, "Maybe. I don't know." "Is that a problem?" I said, "It's my garage." She gave me the smallest little smile. Meaner than anger. That kind of smile people get when they think you're finally catching up to a game they've been ahead of for a while. A couple days later, I came home with takeout and saw that the wrought iron bench on the back patio had been moved along the wall. That bench was old, heavy, and awkward as hell. Solid, forged metal. The kind of thing two grown men carry while pretending it isn't as heavy as it is. My wife is not weak, but she was not moving that thing by herself without scraping the concrete or dropping it. I asked her about it. She didn't even look up from her phone. "I moved it." "You moved that by yourself?" That did it. She put the phone down and went straight on offense. "What? You think I can't do anything without you?" I said, "I think that bench is too heavy for you to move alone." She leaned back in her chair, gave me this crooked little smirk, and said, "You're gone all the time, and you still want to act like nothing in this house can happen without you." I didn't say anything. She kept going. "You don't even do that much here anymore. What am I supposed to do? Let everything wait until you decide to show up and notice it." That one got under my skin because there was enough truth in it to sting. I was gone a lot. I knew that. I was also the one paying for the roof over all of us, and hearing her say it that way made something in me shift. Not into rage, into something colder. It felt like she was telling me, in plain English, that the house had learned how to work without me. We ate dinner with the kids after that, like nothing had happened. That may have been the worst part. She could say something like that to me, then ask our daughter about school and pass the ketchup like we were any normal family. After that, I started noticing another change. It wasn't just the house, it was us. My work schedule had always been hard on the marriage, but we still had a rhythm before. I'd get home, we'd settle back in, and even if we were tired or irritated about life, we'd find our way back to each other. We were still husband and wife in the quiet ways that matter. Then that stopped. I'd be home a week, and she'd stay up late on the couch until I was half asleep. Or she'd say she was tired. Or she'd roll away from me in bed without even meaning to hide it. Then I'd leave for another run, come back, and it would be the same thing again. One cold week home, one trip out, another week of distance when I got back. That pattern was new. That matters. People always want to rewrite a story like this afterward and say the marriage must have been dead for years. Mine wasn't. We had wear and tear. We had resentment. We had my schedule hanging over everything. But this felt different, deliberate, like she had already started living around my absence instead of through it. Then came the bed. I already told you that part first because that's where I stopped giving her the benefit of the doubt. When she denied the smell and ripped the sheets off anyway, I remember standing there, feeling less shocked than insulted. The smell itself was bad enough. A man knows when something male is in his space. But the thing that hollowed me out was realizing she seemed used to it. Used to enough of him being around that she didn't even register what I had picked up immediately. I didn't explode. I didn't wake the kids. I didn't start throwing accusations at the wall. I got quiet. The next morning, I asked a few short questions and got the same thing back. I was imagining it. I was tired. I was making a problem out of nothing. I stopped arguing after that. Once somebody gets comfortable calling you crazy in your own house, arguing only helps them measure how much you know. Around that time, there had been a couple break-ins on a street near ours. Enough that neighbors were talking about motion lights, garage sensors, and camera systems. I used that. I told my wife that with me being gone so much, I wanted better security around the house. Alarm, garage alert, cameras, the whole deal. She agreed immediately, which made sense. An innocent wife likes security. A guilty wife likes to know where the visible security is. So I had a system put in. A couple obvious cameras. Door sensors. A garage alert that hit my phone the second it opened. And a few cameras I didn't mention. One caught the back gate and the stretch of yard beside the fence. Another had a higher angle on the rear patio. Not fancy. Just enough. She knew about the front. She knew about the driveway. She knew about the doorbell. She did not know about all of them. For a few weeks, nothing happened. That almost got to me more than if something had. I started feeling stupid again. Small. Paranoid. I'd lie in some hotel room or job trailer and think maybe I'd built a whole story out of resentment and a smell. Maybe the bench was just pride. Maybe the tool thing meant nothing. Maybe I was turning my own guilt about being gone into some other man I could blame. Then I started checking the hidden camera clips more closely. First, it was my wife. Middle of the day, when the kids were at school or out doing something, she'd slip out the back instead of using the front door. Cut through the yard, go through the side opening near the fence line, and disappear out of frame. Not for hours. 15 minutes. 20. Sometimes less. Then she'd come back the same way, checking over her shoulder before stepping inside. That bothered me because nobody uses their own backyard like that unless they're trying not to be seen doing something simple. A few nights later, I caught movement going the other direction. After the house had gone quiet and the kids' rooms were dark, a man would come in from the back side. Not through the front. Not pulling into the driveway. Straight through the rear edge of the property and in. That part made sense in the ugliest way. During the day, she could slip out when the kids weren't around to notice. At night, he was the one coming to the house, because she wasn't about to leave the children there alone. Never long enough for a sleepover. Long enough for a visit. That was when I knew one thing for sure. Whoever it was lived close. Too close. You can't cut in and out of someone's yard in those short windows unless you're nearby. Real nearby. Same block. Maybe even closer. I still didn't name it then. I don't know why. Maybe because once you name something, it gets harder to pretend your life isn't changing. The kids gave me one more thing that sat like a rock in my chest. My daughter had a bike tire that kept losing air, and she asked my wife, right in front of me, "Can that guy fix it next time?" My wife didn't even answer her. She looked at me and said, "Can you stop doing that face every time the kids talk?" I said, "What face?" She said, "That interrogating face." That told me more than she meant it to. A couple days after that, I was out on a site, looking over a report, when my phone lit up with a garage alert. Middle of the afternoon. I knew the kids were supposed to be out with her for frozen yogurt after school. She had texted me that earlier. I opened the live feed. At first, all I saw was the garage door open partway and light cutting across the floor. Then, my wife stepped into frame. She wasn't unloading anything. She was waiting. A man came in a second later from the side entrance, like he already knew exactly where to go. Ball cap, work shirt, good posture, not nervous. He moved toward my tool wall and said something I couldn't hear. I watched my own wife smile at him in my garage. For a few seconds, all I had was profile and shoulders and the back of a hat. Then he turned enough for the camera to catch his face. Not a handyman. Not some guy from a service company. My next-door neighbor. The man whose truck I'd helped jump one winter. The man who waved at my kids. The man close enough to come through my backyard in daylight, go home for dinner, then come back after dark when the children were asleep. I called my wife immediately. She answered on the second ring. I said, "Where are you?" She said, "Driving home." Why? There was this tiny pause before the lie, like she was picking the version she wanted. I said, "Try that again." She went colder. "What is this?" I said, "You're at the house." "No, I'm not." That was it for me. Not because the affair was finally real, because she said no while I was literally looking at her on my screen. I called a friend of mine who lives about 15 minutes away. Good guy. Steady, not the type to make things bigger than they are. I said, "I need you to go to my house right now and knock on the front door. Don't go around back. Just knock." He asked one question. "Do you want me to go in if she opens?" I said, "Just call me when you get there." I stayed on the camera feed while I waited. My wife heard the knock before she got him out. I could tell by the way she moved. Fast, tight, looking toward the back. The neighbor vanished out of frame. My friend called as he walked up the porch. He knocked. She opened too quickly and stood half in the doorway, like she was trying to keep the inside of the house from becoming part of the conversation. He said later her smile looked painful. While he was talking to her, I heard a noise through the phone from the back of the house. Metal clipped something, then a hard footstep. My friend heard it too. He said, "Who's here?" She said, "No one." He didn't argue. He moved. I could hear wind and his breathing as he rounded the side yard. By the time he got to the back, somebody was already going over the fence line. He didn't catch him clean, but he caught enough. "Your neighbor," he said. Then he read out the house number anyway, just so there was no room left for denial. I sat there in a field office trailer, 3 states away, staring at my own phone like it belonged to someone else. People act like the worst part is finding out your wife cheated. For me, it was finding out how close it all was. Not some stranger from work. Not some guy from a dating app. Not somebody she only saw in another part of town. The man next door. Close enough to know my schedule. Close enough for my kids to know him as the guy. Close enough to learn the weak spots of my marriage just by living beside it. I got home as fast as I could. When I walked in, she was at the kitchen island like she still had the right to be comfortable there. She tried crying before I even said much. That told me she hadn't spent the day preparing honesty. She'd spent it preparing strategy. I told her to stop. I told her I had alerts, camera clips, a witness, and more than enough. I told her I was done listening to one more lie in a house I paid for. I told her the marriage was over. Not, "We'll talk." Not, "Tell me everything." Over. Then I told her she could pack what she needed and go be somewhere else, because she was not staying under my roof after making me feel like the stranger in it. She started trying to talk fast after that. Lonely. My schedule. We drifted. It just happened. None of it helped. Once I saw the shape of it, all the speeches sounded the same. Then I walked next door. He met me halfway down his driveway, which told me he'd been waiting for it. He started with that low, fake, reasonable voice some men use when they've already done something filthy and want credit for staying calm after. Something about how it wasn't planned, how things got complicated, how he didn't want trouble. I let him talk for maybe 10 seconds. Then I told him, very quietly, that if I ever caught him with me in some empty place, there wouldn't be a clean spot left on him. I meant it when I said it. I also turned around and walked away, because one stupid decision in that moment would have handed both of them a story where I was the problem instead of the man they had been using. After that, I did everything the boring way. Lawyer, saved clips, timeline, copies of the alerts, financial records. The house was mine before we got married, which mattered. My lawyer kept me from doing anything dumb with anger and made sure I handled the divorce in a way that protected my kids instead of my pride. My wife tried every version of the rewrite. I was gone too much. She was lonely. It wasn't serious at first. She didn't mean for the kids to be around it. She said that one like she expected credit. I stopped reacting. Once you really see somebody, your feelings about their excuses don't matter much anymore. The only thing I cared about getting right was the kids. I wasn't going to burn down their stability because two selfish adults got comfortable sneaking around me. So I kept the house where it needed to be through the divorce, and afterward I moved it into a trust for my children. That house is for them, their rooms, their school district, their safe place. Not hers, not his. As for the two of them, they did what people like that usually do. They tried to turn the affair into a relationship and act like that proved something. For a little while, she went with him because where else was she going to go? He was already there. That was half the reason it happened in the first place. Convenient man, convenient distance, convenient lie. But neighborhoods notice more than cheaters think they do. People had seen him cutting through the back, seen odd timing, seen my wife at his place when I was out of town, seen the weirdness after it all broke. And once I stopped helping her keep it respectable, the rest spread on its own. Nobody needed a formal announcement. On a street where kids ride bikes between driveways and people know each other's dogs by name, word gets around fast when the woman whose husband works out of town has been sneaking around with the guy next door while her kids are in the house. They couldn't stand it after a while. Couldn't stand school pickup. Couldn't stand people going quiet when they walked up. Couldn't stand every wave feeling loaded. So they moved. Not just off the street, out of the area. Good. My kids still have that house when they're with me. The cabinet door still hangs straight. The gate shuts clean. The patio bench is back where it belongs. I fixed the flickering light myself after everything was over. Took me less than 20 minutes. I'd put that stupid light off for months. The ugliest part of all of it wasn't even the sex. It was how I got pushed out in pieces before I ever had proof. First from the small repairs, then from my own garage, then from the way my kids talked about the guy like he was part of the routine, then from my marriage bed. By the time I smelled him in the sheets, I was already the last one being told what was happening in my own house. That part still gets me sometimes. Not because I miss her, because I know how easy it is for a man to tell himself he's holding a family together while he's gone earning for it. Then one day, he realizes his absence just made the whole thing easier. I don't say that as some grand lesson, just as the truth of what happened to me. The house stayed with my kids. She didn't, and neither did the guy next door.